Well, hey folks, welcome back to Total Party Skills. It's me, King Waspinator, back in your living room and or office space, bedroom, or hell, even your bathroom with you as you take a crap. One more time to talk about Rift South America. This time we're dipping into South America 1 to talk about Colombia. Low key, it might be one of the most important of the nation states of Rift's Earth of them all for South America in its terms of its long-term livability for humanity. It's the most known to North America in the setting of South America's various lands. The coalition and the Republic of Colombia have had contact with each other and do maintain communications. I believe I've seen references to there even being some minor amount of ambassadorial exchange and all that kind of good stuff. But they're fairly apart from each other, so there's not much in the way of direct trade or any of that kind of stuff yet. However, because since the coalition navy does control like most of the Texas coast and up to the Mississippi River, and that is all part of the same section of body of water, just right across the Gulf of Mexico and then across the Caribbean, and then bam, you're at the northern coast of South America. So it's not exactly like it's terribly hard for either side to get word to the other, even if long-range radio communications aren't always practical on Rift's Earth, especially since at that range you'd need satellites, and satellites just aren't a thing anymore. Reason why Colombia though is like low key, like in the long term, one of the more important nation states in the setting is because of the presence of a vampire kingdom that's taken control of the Colombian Andes. Ironically, in Rift's Earth, most of Colombia is actually on top of where Venezuela currently sits. There's like a sliver of Colombia's northeast, and a good chunk of Colombia's southeast is part of the Republic of Colombia in this post-apocalyptic setting. But the bulk of its land is basically the entire western half of Venezuela. In Venezuela, everything from like the city of Bolivar east is now underwater. But from Ciudad Bolivar to the west, that's all part of this new Republic of Colombia. It's just a combination of various survivors for the initial cataclysms hit by the impact of waves and tidal forces and ley lines erupting and earthquakes and all the normal stuff that comes along with having a global cataclysm. And they've gathered together and managed to create yet another one of Rift's many somewhat militant, paranoid, xenophobic, human supremacist nations. Maybe forced by circumstances to be a bit more accepting of a few things than, say, the coalition is, and that might also in part be why the coalition is a little leery of being a buddy-buddy with them. The new German Republic, for instance, is probably more in line with their thinking generally when it comes to acceptance of DVs and the use of magic. However, they're not. Colombia is not quite as accepting and egalitarian as, say, the Sovietsky over in Eastern Europe and Western Russia. They've kind of sold themselves out as a society to have anti-monsters. Anti-monsters are like their signature, addition to the Rift setting. They're these guys. They're basically techno-wizard, full conversion Borgs that are made out of wizards, who they entirely lose their personality. It destroys their PPE. They can't cast any of their magic or any of that kind of stuff. But in exchange, they're put in these super powerful bodies that are just designed to rip supernatural creatures apart. And it's a good thing they have them because, as I say, there's this little tiny vampire kingdom that's in control of that little nub that's left of Panama and the northwestern and western side of Colombia, along the Colombian Andes. The whole thing's been turned to a desert for some mysterious reason, and that's because the vampire intelligence, Hakla, that controls the region, has partnered up with a demon god of weather, who normally in most worlds is a rain and fertility god, but he's that because it's under threat of creating long seasons of drought and all that kind of stuff. Well, the deal he's got with the vampire intelligence is to just entirely wipe out most of the tropical life that's normally to be found. So the entire Colombian Andes are entirely deforested and dry. The foothills have no forests or jungle. The little strip of flatlands that kind of skirt the Andes Mountains along the east, or the Colombian Andes along the east of their flanks, is also desert. So there's just kind of like this hard, abrupt stopping point where you're traveling through like tropical forest, and then bam, desert, mountain, and then the entire western face of Colombia is also all like just unnaturally desert. There's no like natural reason for that, aside from the fact that you have a weather god that's diverting weather patterns around the area. It hasn't gone on to to certify the rest of Colombia itself, because the demon god doesn't want to attract the attention of other gods that exist in South America until the vampires have pacified Colombia. And Colombia has kind of been in a struggle for its existence against this expansionist vampire regime that wants to conquer and turn all the people into herds and all that kind of stuff, as is the pattern in other vampire kingdoms in the Rift setting. But thanks to stuff like the anti-monsters, the Colombians have been able to keep up a fight. Like a lot of the South American techno-states, they have access to glitter boy technology. They can make their own robot armor and power armor, tanks, mega damage weapons, cyborgs. The anti-monsters, they're just specially designed specifically to deal with supernatural evil and stand toe-to-toe with some pretty tough things. It's in exchange for just like entirely sacrificing your humanity or your DB-anity in order to be able to become one of these things. And as I say, Colombia's kind of had to sell out itself, at least as far as from like a coalition point of view, because in order to be able to maintain these things, well, they've had to give dwarves citizenship, and they've had to accept the practice of techno-wizardry to some degree. And as long as they keep needing to produce these guys, they're always going to have at least some amount of DBs being permitted citizenship, and there's some amount of magic is going to have to be permissible, and so that's always going to kind of put them like slightly more on the accepting of everyone kind of spectrum of your human supremacist fascist Rifts nations, but like I said, they're not quite as open-minded as the Rifts Sovietsky. And their militant facing has kind of made them a bit more kind of dictator-esque than like the New German Republic, which still maintains a very like democratic kind of facing, obscuring like a lot of its decisions behind the corporate structure of triacs and all that kind of stuff. But because of South America, because of Colombia's presence there at the top of South America and Haklaw's focus on them, it's kind of kept Haklaw from spreading his territory. And as long as Colombia keeps its shit together, it'll stay contained, just that little tiny corner. Because as long as the vampires don't take over the land, their weather god partner is not going to step in and do anything about that. To expand the deserts yet, but should Colombia fall, they're not going to be able to head south, into Inca territory, because Inca is a nation ruled by its gods, so that's probably going to disqualify them for being the kind of people that Anumu is ever going to want to screw with. But they could easily swing eastward across Colombia up to the coast, and then down through the various human and humanoid communities that you can find in the Thousand Islands region of the Amazon River Basin, and potentially down past the cities of gold and on down to the Silver River Republics, where there's plenty of potential livestock options to be found for a hungry and growing nuclear vampire family. Colombia has a navy, and so its immediate waters are pretty secure. The northwestern channel of where like the new Super Amazon bleeds in to the Atlantic separates Colombia from Bahia. Bahia is its major neighbor. It's a chunk of the northern Brazil, and that's basically like the largest piece of land that's left, and the immediate like downwash delta of the Super Amazon. The Amazon is not just larger entirely just because of the ocean level rise because of Atlantis. or like some like massive increase of rain or anything like that. There's a bunch of elemental gates to like elemental planes of water that also are feeding into the Amazon now. So its output is like super ridiculous. So it's almost really qualifies as like a freshwater inland sea practically. And so like most of like northern Brazil and little countries along the coastline between Venezuela and the border of Brazil are pretty much all been washed away. And the largest of those like little chunks of land that have still remained is land of Bahia. Practitioners of voodoo found their powers like innervated and enhanced when the ley lines occurred during the cataclysm. And for a variety of cultural reasons, it was just kind of natural for survivors to look to them for protection. So they kind of just naturally became the rulers of Bahia and have maintained that ever since. And, they have a good trade relationship with Colombia. They're obviously not on the same page about everything. Bahia is much more accepting of aliens and magic, obviously. But, they do have a need for some, technologies and produced goods, which Colombia is able to make, whereas Bahia has more time and labor force for agricultural kind of goods that Colombia desperately needs so that it can maintain its focus on, keeping its Western Front sewn up so that vampires don't overrun and kill everyone. Which, is a good thing. The Bahia itself is likely to stay, relatively safe overall from a vampire invasion itself, should the vampires manage to ever take Colombia by some chance. In part because of, the various gods that the inhabitants of Bahia venerate. Once again, Anumu, the weather god that has his tie with the vampire intelligence. He is not interested in getting on the bad side of other gods directly in their territories. So if the vampires cannot pacify the population, he's not going to come in and start doing any of his kind of weather tricks. And, Bahia has, direct ties through, various, priestly type organizations to some powerful spirits. And because they're a magic practicing nation themselves, that kind of gives them a bit of more of an edge against a vampire invasion than the techno nations actually have, because it's all great that you have lasers and all that kind of stuff, but you need an odd combination of things to take out vampires and rifts, and laser cannons are not one of them. So anyway, I guess that's most of what there is to say, just in brief, about that little quadrant of the South American setting. So we pretty much just have the Silver River republics of Argentina and southern Brazil's cities of gold and Lagarto left. So, I guess we'll just have to have a nail-biting cliffhanger as to whether or not which one it's going to be next. Anyway, stay tuned and stay waspinated.